Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. This is a quote by the infamous American author Helen Keller, and it summarizes this video perfectly. So if you're gonna click off now, please don't, because I'm gonna unpack this a little more. Unfortunately, when someone says they'll be taking a risk, it automatically makes us think that they'll be doing something unreasonable. Risky, if you will.
However, at the same time, we hear repeatedly that nothing in this life is attainable without a necessary amount of risk.
So why do we think like this? Now let me tell you about my experiences with risk-taking before you think I'm just some guy talking about a random topic.
The start of my risk-taking journey was in the military. I was an officer for 5 years, and in that time frame I was taught the fundamentals of risk management and of course experienced it. By the time I left, I was determined to give that same effort, but for my own goals.
So, I travelled.
I spent about 4 months in South America, and 2 weeks of those in Antarctica. The risk taken there had to engage was less dangerous than the army, however it too had its repercussions.
And after that, I decided to move to London, the start of my creative journey.
Moving to one of the biggest cities on earth, with high rent, intense lifestyle, and long work hours. It was one of the biggest risks I had to take.
When I take a risk, I usually think, what is the worst that can happen? And it ranges from losing money, losing time, and if going back to my army experience, loss of a life. Sometimes when you take a risk, there's a sensation of despair, almost like you're leaving everything to luck. Now I want to share some of the examples of me dealing with the negatives of taking a risk. I could go on and on about the philosophy of risk-taking, but here on this channel I like to stay practical. As an officer, I oversaw several things, but in combat, my role was to make sure all the armoured vehicles were okay and transferable. And in one big-scale training, that's exactly what I did. When I was travelling, I met this girl. We hit it off, we didn't know each other before. And we made plans together to go to the Iguazu Falls. One night, I didn't want to partake in intercourse, let's put it lightly, and she kicked me out of bed, forcing me to go to the falls by myself. Now I don't know if philosophers or scientists call it this way, but I call this period the summit above the clouds. Below the clouds it could seem dark, stormy, and hard to travel through. But the minute you break that line of clouds, you see the summit that is quiet, snowy, and sunny. When you take a risk, you start with a decision, leading you to usually a treacherous path. You can stop and turn around, but you'll just go back to where you were. So if you take that risk, you go to that path, which will be very tough, but by the end, you reach the summit above the clouds. And I can't reach the lines in time. There we go. One second. This is such a bad transition covering the lens. Right. If you decided not to take the risk, you decided to stay in this dull and dark place, right? It's not as bad as the path to the summit, but definitely isn't the summit that is above the clouds. My ass is muddy now.
I'll go back to the examples I said before you. If I hadn't taken the risk that resulted in me almost dying, the mission would be a failure. The tanks would have stayed still and able to achieve what they needed to achieve. If I hadn't taken the risk of making those plans with that girl, I probably wouldn't have gotten to view the falls, and I wouldn't have met the amazing people I had along the way.
If I hadn't moved to London, I wouldn't have gotten the inspiration to start this channel and for you to see this right now. And the truth is that most people abstain from risks. They'd rather stay in this quote-unquote safe town at the bottom of the mountain. And my message to you is that I urge you to not be that person. Be that person that leaves the boring town that no one likes, goes to this crazy, dangerous journey, but with one dream in mind, eventually reaching that summit and getting your goals. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying I reached the top. I think I'm actually quite far from it. But I know the truth. I know that me completing this journey will end up with me being happy. and what other goal was more worthy.